On July 9, 2024, in the worst part of a heat wave, a white pickup rolled into my bay with the temperature needle buried and a thin curl of steam rising off the hood. The owner climbed out looking sick to his stomach. He was not angry, he was scared. He told me the truck had overheated twice that week on the highway, both times out of nowhere, and a shop across town had already floated the words "head gasket" and handed him a number north of $2,400. He asked me almost quietly if the engine was done. Today I'm going to show you why that scene almost never means what drivers think it means, and how one of the cheapest parts on your entire vehicle, a part most people have never once inspected, quietly controls whether your engine survives a hot day or cooks itself alive. I have seen this exact moment more times than I can count. A driver walks in already grieving the car. They've read the forums. They've seen the horror stories about warped heads and cracked blocks. They've been told a 5-figure repair might be coming, and by the time they reach me, they're braced to spend money they may not even have. That man with the pickup had 96,000 miles on the clock and a truck that ran perfectly the rest of the time. I did not pull the intake. I did not order a head gasket. I did not touch a single major component. I put a pressure tester on the cooling system, watched the gauge bleed off almost immediately, and reached for a part that cost me $8 off the shelf. 20 minutes later, that truck held pressure like new and never overheated again. That right there is why this video matters. Because the thing that saved his engine was not skill or luck. It was understanding one component that almost every driver ignores, most shops barely mention, and nobody thinks about until it's too late. Here's the uncomfortable truth. That little cap on your radiator or coolant reservoir is not just a lid. It is a precision pressure regulator, and it is the single most important reason your engine does not boil over the moment things get hot. And when it fails silently. There is no warning light for a bad cap. There is no dashboard alert. Your car runs completely normal right up until the day it does not, and by then the damage is often already spreading. I've been turning wrenches for over 2 decades, and if there's one part I wish every driver understood, it's this one. So let me explain exactly what it does, because once you see it, you'll never look at that cap the same way again. Water, on its own, boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a problem because your engine wants to run right around 200 to 220 degrees under normal conditions, and much hotter than that when you're climbing a grade or crawling through summer traffic. If your coolant boiled at 212 degrees, it would flash to steam constantly, and here's the part almost nobody knows. The instant coolant turns to vapor, it loses roughly 97% of its ability to carry heat away from the engine. Liquid pulls heat. Steam does almost nothing. So a boiling cooling system isn't just messy, it's a system that has stopped cooling at the exact moment you need it most. This is where your antifreeze earns part of its keep. A proper 50-50 mix of coolant and water raises that boiling point to around 223 degrees. Better, but still not enough margin for a truck towing in July. So engineers borrowed a trick your grandmother already knew. They pressurized the system. Think about a pressure cooker on the stove. Seal a pot, trap the steam, let pressure build, and suddenly water refuses to boil at 212 degrees. It climbs well past it, which is exactly why food cooks faster and hotter inside. Your cooling system does the identical thing, and the cap is the seal that makes it possible. For every single pound of pressure it holds, the boiling point of your coolant rises about 3 degrees. A standard 15 or 16 pounds per square inch cap adds roughly 45 degrees of headroom, pushing your boiling point from 223 all the way up to around 265 to 268 degrees. Many modern engines run caps rated up to 20 or 22 pounds per square inch, buying even more with boiling points near 285 degrees. That's the entire reason your engine can sit at 230 degrees in stopped traffic on a scorching day and be perfectly fine instead of erupting. So sit with that for a second. An $8 cap is single-handedly responsible for tens of degrees of boiling protection. Take that cap away or let it go weak, and your expensive engine is suddenly relying on 223-degree coolant to survive 250-degree conditions. It can't. It boils. And the moment it boils, cooling collapses. Now here's how that little cap actually pulls this off, because it's smarter than it looks. Inside there are two spring-loaded valves, not one. The main valve is the pressure valve. As the engine heats up and the coolant expands, pressure climbs inside the sealed system. That valve holds firm until pressure hits the cap's rating, say 16 pounds per square inch, and only then does it crack open, venting a small amount of coolant into the overflow tank so nothing bursts. The cap is deliberately engineered to be the weak point of the whole system. It's designed to give first, on purpose, so that your radiator, your heater core, and your hoses don't rupture instead. The second valve is the one almost nobody knows exists. It is a tiny vacuum valve, and it works in reverse. When you shut the engine off and everything cools down, the coolant contracts and creates a vacuum inside the system. That vacuum valve opens and gently pulls the coolant that got pushed into the overflow tank back into the radiator, keeping the whole system completely full and completely free of air. Pressure out when hot, coolant back in when cool. That's the quiet, endless cycle happening under your hood every single drive, and you never feel a bit of it. Now let me show you what happens when that cap fails, because this is where drivers lose engines and money for no reason at all. The most common failure is a tired spring. Over years of heat cycles, the spring inside that pressure valve weakens. A cap that's supposed to hold 16 pounds per square inch now gives up at 8 or 9. And remember the math. Every pound of pressure is 3 degrees of boiling protection. A weak cap doesn't just leak a little, it quietly strips 20, 30, sometimes more degrees off your boiling point. The system that used to protect you to 265 degrees now boils at 240 degrees. Everything looks fine on a mild day. Then the temperature climbs, you hit traffic, and a car that ran perfectly all winter suddenly boils over in summer. The driver panics. The shop starts talking head gaskets, and the whole thing traces back to a spring that costs less than a fast food lunch to replace. The second failure is a bad seal. That cap has a rubber gasket that has to seal perfectly, and rubber hardens and cracks with age. Once the seal fails, the system cannot hold pressure, and worse, it starts sucking AIR. Air is the enemy of a cooling system. AIR pockets get trapped in the heater core, in the thermostat housing, along the hoses. Those pockets block coolant flow and create hot spots. And because air can't carry heat the way liquid can, the engine temperature starts swinging up and down for no obvious reason. A classic tell here is a heater that suddenly blows lukewarm or cold in winter. That's an air pocket sitting in your heater core, and a leaking cap is a very common cause. The third failure hits that little vacuum valve. If it sticks shut, the coolant that got pushed into the overflow tank when hot can never get drawn back in as the engine cools. So the system pulls a vacuum on itself instead, and you'll walk out one morning to find a radiator hose collapsed flat, crushed inward like a sucked-out juice box. People see that and assume something catastrophic happened. Usually it's just a $2 valve inside an $8 cap that stopped doing its job. And the fourth failure is the opposite. A valve stuck open, venting coolant into the overflow every time the engine warms up and never holding proper pressure. The result is a car that's chronically low on coolant no matter how many times you top it off, an overflow tank that always seems full or overflowing, and a driver slowly chasing a leak that was never really a leak at all. Now here's the part that should bother you a little. Every one of these failures produces the same headline symptom: an overheating engine, and overheating is exactly the symptom that generates the biggest, most profitable repair estimates in the business. Head gaskets, water pumps, radiators, thermostats. Those are real jobs with real labor hours and real invoices. A cap test takes a technician about 5 minutes, and a replacement costs the customer less than a set of wiper blades. It doesn't look impressive written on an estimate. It doesn't justify a big number. So it very often gets skipped, sometimes because the shop is chasing the bigger ticket, and honestly sometimes because they simply didn't think to check the cheapest part first. I'm not telling you every mechanic is out to get you. Most aren't. I'm telling you the incentives of the whole industry point away from the $8 answer, and that gap is where drivers get hurt. So before you ever authorize a big cooling repair, the cap should be one of the first things checked, not the last. And you can be part of that conversation now because you understand it. Here's how you check it, safely and simply. First, and most important, never ever open a cap on a hot engine. The system is pressurized and the coolant is well above boiling. A hot cap can spray scalding coolant and steam straight into your face. Let the engine cool completely. Once it's cold, take the cap off and look at it. Inspect the rubber seal for cracks, hardening, tears, or flattening. Press on the spring-loaded valve. It should move with firm resistance and snap back, not feel loose, gummy, or stuck. Look for white, crusty coolant residue around the cap and the filler neck, which points to pressure escaping where it shouldn't. If anything looks worn, the smart move is to just replace it. Any parts store can pressure test a cap on a little hand pump, or a shop can do it in minutes, and that test tells you definitively whether it holds its rated number. When you do replace it, buy the correct pressure rating for your vehicle. It's usually stamped right on the old cap. This matters, and here's the honest caveat. Do not upgrade to a higher pressure cap thinking more is better. Your cooling system was engineered around a specific pressure, and a cap that holds too much can turn your radiator, heater core, or hoses into the new weak point and blow them out instead. Match the number. On a lot of vehicles, a good OEM quality cap runs $8 to $15, and I'll be blunt, this is one part where I lean toward a quality brand over the cheapest bin option, because I've tested new caps straight out of the box that couldn't hold their own rating. And now the caveat that keeps you honest, because I promised you the truth and not a magic bullet. A cap is not a cure-all. If your engine is genuinely overheating, the cap is the first and cheapest suspect. But it is not the only one. A real coolant leak, a failing water pump, a clogged radiator, a stuck thermostat, a fan that isn't spinning, or an actual blown head gasket will all cook an engine, and no cap on earth fixes those. What checking the cap gives you is clarity. If a fresh cap holds pressure and the overheating stops, you just saved yourself thousands over a repair you never needed. If you replace the cap and the problem comes right back, You've spent $8 to rule out the easy answer, and you now know the trouble is real and deserves a proper diagnosis. Either way, you're ahead. You're testing instead of guessing, and that is exactly how good technicians think, even when they don't say it out loud. That pickup on the July afternoon drove out for the price of a cap and a top-off of coolant. The owner sat in the parking lot for a minute afterward, and when he came back in, he had two expressions on his face at once: relief that his engine was fine, and a slow-burning anger at how close he'd come to paying for a teardown he never needed. That's the feeling I want you to hold on to. Because the most expensive thing a failing cap cost you isn't the $8 to fix it. It's the $1,000 repair you almost approve out of fear, and the engine you almost give up on for no reason. So the next time your temperature gauge climbs, before you panic, before you believe the worst-case number, before you hand over your card, cool the engine, pull the cap, check the seal and the spring, and test the pressure. It is the cheapest, fastest, most overlooked check in the entire cooling system, and it has saved more engines than any tool in my box. If this changed the way you think about that little cap, hit like so more drivers see it before their next hot day. Subscribe if you want weekly breakdowns that hand you control instead of fear. And if you've ever fixed an overheating scare with a part this cheap that a shop wanted to charge you a fortune for, drop the story in the comments, because the more of us who know this, the fewer of us get taken for a ride.